We're coming to the section of Ecclesiastes where it's more proverbial, or in terms of Proverbs, and how Solomon deals with life. And we have looked at this slide. You're probably getting tired of this slide, but it kind of keeps us with regard to where we are in the whole process. We've looked at 8, 16, and 17, and that's that section, kind of the conclusion of the matter, where he summarizes his quest of trying to get a hold of the providential workings of God in a way that can make sense and he can process it. And that's utterly frustrated. And so we've gone back now and started kind of working through material where he is looking at various aspects of life. And we have noticed the frustrations with his own experiences with the cause and effect in God's world. And we have looked at chapters 4 and 5, the frustration over the existence of oppression and rivalries, and then have moved into this last section, which is chapter 6, 7, and 8, with regard to him continuing to deal with various problems. And we noted along the way that the concept of the fear of the Lord meant that a person could be in relationship with God, so while they don't understand, they can still appropriate the enjoyment of life. But then we noted that at one section here in chapter 6, he says, here's a case is very troubling, where God gives riches and wealth and honor so that he lacks nothing for his soul of all that he desires, yet God gives him no power to eat of it. And we looked at that, and that seems to be problematic. And so, how does this work? And the way I think that we handle this is referring to this little pyramid that has to do with the fear of the Lord, is that the man that's being considered there isn't being withheld something by God that he deserves, but really isn't in a relationship with God that triggers it. He really does not have basically an attitude of the fear of the Lord, respect for him, a relationship of faith. He's not characterized by doing good. We saw that. And therefore, he's not empowered by God. God would give anybody who responds to him that power, but that does not happen in this case. And so that launches us into a number of discussions where you say, well, this just doesn't seem right. This is a reversal, and we're going to see that today. So what we're looking at here is, as aggravating and perplexing as life is, we are still to live it joyfully, and that requires wisdom. And so Solomon is here not just as the philosopher. He's pretty much wrapped that up, but now he's here as the pastor. He's here as the shepherd. He's here as the one who wants to help people come into an appreciation of, well, how do you live life in this situation where things just aren't as they should. And that brings us to the last couple of verses of chapter 6. And this really begins a new section, section 2 through to the rest of the book, which says, whatever has been, its name was given long ago, and it is known what man is, neither can he contend with him who is mightier than he. Now you read that in isolation, you hear, what is that? What's Hebrew poetry? A long time ago, okay? But it's in a context. And so we have the chance, and this is God's intention, that he can communicate in language and allow it to be understood long times afterwards in different mindsets, because it's him and he's communicating with us. But this takes us in some new directions. Basically, he says here, man is what he is, but only God fully understands what that is and knows what we must do about it. So there is this mystery. We live in this mystery of how to respond. And that's what's going to happen here. So there's a change of thought in these two verses. There's no more occurrence of chasing after the wind from this point on. That's been dropped in regularly up to this point. It's just one of those little things we notice about structure. There are very few occurrences of the word labor from this point on. When they do occur, it's more in these summary statements that go back to the whole. And that's one of the changes we see. And there's an increased concern with knowing in regard to present experiences in the future. And so we will see that. The other thing, and I was going to count them up, but I never got that done. The word wise and wisdom just occurs over and over and over and over in these sections. And so he's going to be talking about here's how you approach life with the wisdom that God gives so that it can be lived as successfully as possible, even though things are going to get in the way and get turned upside down. This whole idea of naming something. Naming shows ownership and control. God gave Adam the responsibility of naming the animals. And that's important. And this is a feature of God's. He can name something and it is what it is. If the name has a reference to the character, it fits. And so that's what's going on here. And the point that's being made is that God is sovereign. He's the one who determines things and determines what's going to happen. And he calls it as it is. And he alone understands all things. And so this is kind of an introduction to what's going to be to go on. This whole idea of contending. It says there are many words that create cloudiness, that create vapor, kind of clouding the issue. But what does that profit? Now, the whole idea of contend here, I think, is what this is about. And that is, have you ever had an argument with God? We've all done foolish things like that, okay? And the thing is, we think we understand something, and yet God isn't cooperating. We say, oh, God. Paul had one of those arguments with God when God told him, I'm going to send you off to the Gentiles. He said, wait a minute, God. You don't have anybody like me who knows these people and so forth. And what God said? Go. Okay. He didn't try to explain it to him. He just said, go. I think that's kind of the background here of what's going on. God says what it is. He says what we are, who we are, what's going to happen. And contend with him. That's not going anywhere. So the point is, these words, no matter how many words we may use in an attempt to explain our own lives, our own motivations, our own thinking about something, it only creates vapor. It just clouds the issue with regard to, from our perspective. God knows what he's doing, and Solomon is trying to drive that point home continually through this section. But in the meantime, he is also going to give advice on here's what you should do. And we'll put that into the context of it doesn't always work out. So this is just a transition paragraph. Just a couple more things here on verse 12. For who knows what is good for man in life, all the days of his vain, ungraspable life, which he spends, accomplishes like a shadow. For who can tell a man what will be after him? So what's going on here is that a person cannot know what is always best to do because he or she doesn't know what is coming next. That's one of the reasons, okay? And James is writing, and he says, when you encounter various trials, ask God for wisdom. We don't always know what to do. And even reading the Bible, we can't always know what to do. And one of the things we don't know, why we don't know is because, what's going to happen next? What if I do this? What's going to happen? And Solomon just lays it out there. You don't know. You don't know. That's the world we live in. So basically, answering the question, who knows what is good for man in life? Solomon says, I'm going to tell you, be wise. Okay? Be wise. God has given us wisdom. He's given us how to act and how to be. And so be wise. So that's going to be answered by way of the instructions on wise living, which is what will be from here to the end of the book. And so we've been looking at that in Paul Harvey's words, the rest of the story. So that's where we're going, okay? That's where it's headed. When it says here, who knows what is good, all the days of his ungraspable life, which he spends, or that's our word for work. Remember our work word that was accomplishing something? That he accomplishes is like a shadow, okay? I think the idea here is that, we work, we do things, we put things together, we construct something, we construct a life, and we have a basic conception about that, don't we? Okay? Is it true? Is it accurate? Is it fully true, complete? If you had 10 of your best friends write about your life, would they come up with insights that you maybe had missed about yourself? Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Well, what this is saying is, you can spin your life story, and no matter how good a recall you have, and no matter how well you can reason, do you know what that's going to be like with regard to the reality as God sees it? It's going to be like a shadow, okay? It's just going to be hazy. Yeah, that's sort of you, but that isn't the complete you. Because God's the one who sees us in all contexts. He sees us where we are, where we've been, where we're going, and all of the things that played into that we aren't aware of, and all of the things that he's done through us that we aren't aware of. We are more than what we can ever conceive of ourselves to be. And so Solomon is resting in revelation in this regard. So whatever we make of our lives through living them, from our perspective, is but a shadowy likeness of what that life truly is from God's perspective. So he's comforting. He's saying, yeah, I know the frustration. I know our temptations. This is the way life is. God's up there. He knows everything. We can't contend with him in understanding or anything else. But you know what? He still wants you to live successfully, and you can live unto his pleasure. He concludes this little section, for who can tell a man what will be after him under the sun? Well, that's not going to be answered, okay? Not going to do it. Try to divine the future, and there's whole, people think they can do that. We can't. The only way you can know the future is if somebody from the future can put that into your head. And God does that. He did that through the prophets. But it wasn't their ability. And so what we see here is that we are what we are. God knows that fully, no matter how we try to fill it in. And he's the one, therefore, that can tell us what we need to do. We can't tell the future. We can't even accurately and completely analyze the present. So that's the launching point for what we find here in chapters 7 and 8. All of chapter 7 and 8:15 up to the last two verses, which are really a conclusion of the whole book in a sense. Solomon's making this point: the just and the unjust receiving each other's due illustrates that we cannot really understand the plan of God from what occurs on a daily basis. So we must live wisely and trust God with it. So what we're going to have here is some enigmatic reversals, okay? This has been hinted at earlier, and it's going to be developed. But he starts with this one-line or two-line, one-verse statement. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of one's birth. Doesn't explain it, just drops that in there and goes on, okay? So, but the point is, how one lives life really matters, because character is what is most important. And so that's what we need to think through. So a good name, okay. So he's putting the good, and we looked at this, and this has been a main theme in the book. Good indicates a state or function that is appropriate to whatever it refers to. Good is what God expects in human behavior. Good is what God is. And we noted that the summary verse, Micah 6:8, he's shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Not the exhaustive definition of good, but a kind of an outline. So it's not just a name, but it's a good name. And so we see a couple of things here. We need to be aware of a couple of things. First of all, name is associated with character here. And that's That's the point that it's making. And character is built on being and doing good. Character is built on being and doing good. Now, the name at one's birth speaks of family and anticipation. So when a baby's born, it's a very joyous occasion, a great thing. And from a standpoint of human acceptance and reception in the event, is a much more joyous occasion than the day of birth. So this verse must not be talking about actually the emotions that come with dying and being born on those who are part of it. It's on something else. The point is that it's at death that one's name is associated with what the person has become. Okay? So he's not saying it's better to die. It's not pessimism. It's not despair. And you can read that in some text throughout the book, as we've seen. But what it's saying here is with regard to your name, it's what you end up as. It's what somebody thinks of when your name is mentioned. Okay? And so that's the idea here. So with that introduction, he launches on into some wisdom, some advice. First of all, in verses 2 to 6, on laughter and sorrow. It's better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living should take this to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter. Oh, wait a minute. He's been telling us to enjoy life. So what's he talking about sorrow? Well, he's trying to make a point. We'll have to read it in context. For by the sadness of the face, the heart is made good. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It's better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This also is vapor or vaporous. Now the point in this section of verses is that one should take a serious approach to living as opposed to one that obscures wise living in a light-hearted frivolity sort of way. So the main point is that a person's basic approach to life determines his ultimate values and pursuits. So these are kind of stylized opposites that he's using to make a point. And the point is taken by looking at the whole thing in context. First of all, just to kind of keep in mind, house is the established place or occasion for something. So he's not just saying better to mourn than to laugh. He's saying better go to the house, okay? So it's an establishment of. And so it has to do with an activity that is part of life. But looking at the occasion of something, and I'll illustrate it. I'll illustrate it here in a moment. Sorrow, mourning is often a cause for serious reflection, such as at a funeral, which naturally results in living life as pleasing to God. So the house of mourning would be like a funeral home, wouldn't it? Okay. And that's what comes to mind. Now we go there not out of choice. We go there when it's necessary, and we mourn the loss of somebody. Even it's a celebration of their life. There is that somberness. And when you listen to obituaries, if you're like me, you think, man, is my life going to be that good? And we admire people, and we say, yeah, we're here to celebrate that life because God was in it and God did something great with it. And it causes us to think, okay, it is profitable. All right? As opposed to going to the house of feasting. Okay, what's your favorite restaurant? Is it somber or joyous? Some of us go to somber restaurants. Everything's quiet. The guy walks around with his and frowns and, okay. Most of us go to Chuck E. Cheese's or something like that, Especially, huh? Yeah. Especially if you got your kids with you, all right? So this is the opposite from a house of mourning, from a funeral home, that has to do with you go to feast, you go to eat, you go to have fun, and people there aren't thinking about the somber things of life, okay? And those are joyous occasions. Nothing wrong with that. Which one is more important with regard to the outcome of your life? The thoughts that go through your mind when you're thinking about death and whether I'm going to have a good name that will reflect a character that God is pleased with, or the instantaneous pleasure that comes from having a great meal with friends and, in a happy, joyous, cheerful environment. Okay? So that's why he says that sorrow is better. Sorrow is better than laughter. By the sadness of the face, the heart is made good. The idea here is often when we see somebody who's sad, who's pensive, maybe who's just been through a difficult circumstance, if they process it through faith and in their relationship with God, they end up being happy about it. They end up being uplifted internally. So that's how to take it here, because by the sadness of the face, the heart is made good. The heart can be directed to think on those things that really matter, those things that really matter from God's standpoint. So that's what's going on here. Laughter, there's a time for proper laughter. We see that in chapter 3 and verse 4. The laughter here is associated with the hilarity produced by surface emotions rather than reflective joy. And so he's talking about the laughter of the fool, the song of fools. Interesting here, for as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of a fool. Okay? Now, why would thorns be crackling under a pot? Talking about a fire. What do you do in a pot? You cook your food. Okay? What kind of fires make the best cooking fire? Well, I've done a considerable amount of camping and hiking in the mountains, and you're looking to build a fire. The thing that burns absolutely the fastest and quickest is dry pine needles. Okay, but you only use dry pine needles to get other stuff if you're going to cook. So that's the point here. Okay. The crackling, so some thorn that burns just instantly, and they just crack, and say, boy, this sounds like really something's happening. And then all of a sudden, it's gone, okay? So the point he's making is the laughter of a fool is like that with regard to what really matters in life. So he's not talking about just laughter in general. He's not talking about expressions of joy. He's talking about the kind of an emotion that in the end it's just hollow, okay? It's what friends laugh at when they're doing something stupid, maybe even something dangerous, maybe even something harmful, okay? And so the point here is that there are situations that seem somber that really make you reflect. And if you're processing life as God has directed you to, as God wants you to, as Solomon is teaching us, those times are going to be profitable in the end. They're going to contribute to the development of character. But if you're just living for the moment, you're just living for excitement, you're just living for a happy up, you can find it. Just go to the places where that's happening. But when you walk away, nothing's really happened that it will impact your life, that will help you become what God wants you to become. So that's what we see here with regard to this on laughter and sorrow. He continues on in verse 7. He says, surely extortion or oppression makes the wise man foolish, and a bribe corrupts the understanding. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Don't be hasty in your spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools. Don't say, why were the former days better than these? For you do not ask wisely about this. So what we see here in this little section is the wise do not allow prosperity, adversity, tensions to corrupt their behavior. You see, this is what he started out. There's something that happens that to the good that the wicked deserve, and something the wicked that the good deserve. And he says that's life. That's life. But so you have these tensions, you have these, bad things are going to happen. And there are various situations where we are tempted to move in the wrong direction. So what we find here is these verses share the idea of being pressured into something rather than taking the long view, okay? And so we have extortion or oppression, being forced to do something I don't want to do, or a bribe, being enticed to do something that I don't want to do. So verse 7, both fear of loss and illegitimate gain can cause unwise responses. And no matter how good you've been raised, no matter how good a family you come from, no matter how much you love the Lord, there's always going to be temptations to do the wrong thing. Just to just go a little step and, I'll fudge here, it really won't matter, my heart's in it, and so forth. And so, and the greater the external pressure, the greater the temptation, the greater the pull. And so this is just a general statement about the kinds of situations that can move us away from wise living and move us into foolish choices. And everybody is subject to that, is prone to that, is temptable by that. The end of Solomon's life is the prime example. Verse 8, the first part, better is the end of a thing than its beginning. The basic response to these pressures is to consider the long-term consequences. That's what children never do. My son, don't do that. I won't. It won't. It can't. It never. Oh, yeah, okay. Go ahead, learn hard way, okay? As we grow up, maturity, one of the hallmarks of maturity is thinking more and more down the line. How is my action now, my thought now, my choice now? Where is that going to lead? And so that's what maturity is. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is learning to think the thoughts of God, to be programmed by His way of living life, so that those long-term effects are going to be possible, are going to be more likely. The latter part of that verse, the patient in spirit is better than the proud. Patience in these pressures wards off both pride and anger. Don't be hasty in your spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools. So it's not just sometimes material things like oppression and bribery, but sometimes it's pride things. Sometimes it's just difficulties that come. Not too long ago, I was speaking with a young friend, and he was sharing with me how this problems with his work, and his supervisor decided to just pull a switch with regard to work assignments, really unjustly, and had been critical of him. And he was able to just not say anything because he didn't want to be angry, and that was wise. And so he was able to later think through it and then go and talk to the supervisor, just have a calmer, not destructive, explosive conversation about it. Now, I think he was in the right, and his advisor was probably in the wrong, or supervisor, but that's not the point. The point is, how do we respond in those situations? And so again, very, very, very positive, very helpful. And the book of Proverbs is full of anger and the tongue and how we respond. And so this is Solomon crafting this for this particular context. Because anger is centered in the emotional, reactive present. Okay, and we need to think about the future. And so that's part of the advice here. But then he says in verse 10, don't say, why were the former days better than these? For you do not ask wisely about this. Anybody have trouble with that? Yeah, the older we get, the more temptation. Oh, back when I could do this, or back with this. Oh, that was so good. Wouldn't it be wonderful to go to junior high again? Wait a minute. On second thought, maybe those weren't such good days. Or high school. We can't see forward, And we should not long for the glamorized past. God wants us to live in the present. We don't know what's coming. We can't undo what is past. He can. He can take care of wrongs. He can take care of all those things. He's forgiven me. I'm in grace. He says, don't live in the past and don't live in or for the future. Live for today. Now, that doesn't mean you don't plan. That doesn't mean you aren't responsible. But it means this is the life, this is the moment that he wants me to respond in. This is the moment I am to be wise. And so in these little statements, basically there's going to be pressure. There's going to be pressure to react, to respond wrong, to make the wrong choices. There's going to be a pressure toward foolishness. Be wise. It's a choice. You have to make that choice. You have to be intent on it. And so he's fully recognizing, life is going to be unfair. And you're not going to always get what you deserve, and sometimes you're going to get what you don't deserve, and that's the way it goes. So pressures to react hastily, resist those. Verses 11 to 14, wisdom, protective and productive. Let's just kind of think about what wisdom does. Wisdom is as good, or wisdom is good as like an inheritance or possessions. I know I've got too many things there. It's hard to translate this. He's either saying wisdom with inheritance is good, or they both have good. It fits as we look at it. Yes, it is more excellent or advantageous for those to see the sun. Wisdom is a defense, even as money is a defense. But the excellency or the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Wisdom is advantage. It yields the best and fullest living experience despite not being able to fully comprehend the flow of God's working. Again, Solomon is working in the reality of, I can't put it all together. I cannot track the providential working of God. And there are things that just seem contrary to his character as I look at his governance, his moral governance of the world. But I'm still here to live. So this is an analogy. It's not a directive to amass possessions as protection. Oh, wisdom is good and material things are good. It's easier to get material things than wisdom. I think I'll major on that. That'll protect me. All he's saying is, if you've got money, that can help you resist some things. That can help you deal with some things. It's not saying that's to be a main objective. So verse 11, both wisdom and money give the possessor certain advantages in life. That's true. Okay? And you don't have to become too wise to realize that. And the book of Proverbs is, young person do this, and look at those who do this, and look at those who do that, and learn from that and become wise. Take this path, launch your way on that path, and stay off the path of foolishness. Well, money just, people that have money, they don't have to worry about your car breaking down. Buy a new car, all right? Fix the problem, all right? So, money can do that. Wisdom also can be protective. And that's the only point he's making here, but he's making the point because you know how money works. I want to make the point that think about wisdom in the same way, okay? The wiser you become, the more protected you are from various things that happen with regard to your soul, with regard to your inner person. So in general, wisdom protects in its immediate benefits in daily living. And in particular, its protective advantage lies in the knowledge of skillful living and day-to-day experiences, which makes that life lived valuable and lasting. He says, for wisdom is a defense, even as money is a defense, but the excellency or the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. I think I didn't get that word in there. As you read Proverbs, the words knowledge and wisdom are intertwined in the book. They are roughly synonymous, but they aren't exactly saying the same thing, and sometimes they're used together. But there's a certain understanding of life. There's a certain understanding of how God has designed life that comes from reading the book of Proverbs, for instance. Okay? And so what he's saying is when I approach life with that understanding, and when I follow the specific guidelines that the book of Proverbs would give me with regard to certain situations, that's not only going to protect me, but it's also going to result in a quality of life. It's going to result in me being something more and better than I was. And so that's I think that's the idea. That's the idea that's going on here. Now, just to finish out this section, verse 13 on, consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which He has made crooked? In the day of prosperity, be joyful. In the day of adversity, consider, yes, God has made the one side by side with the other, to the end that man should not find out anything after him. So verses 13 and 14 are balancing statements. They're balancing statements. Basically, what God does can't be undone. And if God grants prosperity, rejoice. Great. Thank you. If God brings adversity, consider they are related in a way that gives us no clue as to what happens next. Okay? Well, flat tire this morning. Going to be a bad day. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a flat tire. And you're going to have the best day you've had in months. You don't know. You don't know. We do those things with our minds, don't we? And we're kind of stampeded into those kinds of things. I found a parking place. Going to be a great day. Maybe not. Maybe you're going to get fired when you get up there on the 13th floor. Who knows? We don't know. We don't know. So God's advice is, in this given day, you're going to experience prosperity, adversity, good things, bad things. Be what God wants you to be. Keep following Him. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, okay? Those circumstances don't make you. It's our response to those circumstances that determines what we become, determines what our name will bring to mind at the day of our death in terms of our character. So wisdom is protective and productive, but it is not predictive, okay? So being what God wants me to be, doing what God wants me to do, doesn't have anything to do with what the next moment may bring into my experience, okay? So again, live today. Yeah, plan to live tomorrow like today, but it's today that you have the choices to make, and it's today that we need to live. 7:15 is again kind of just in there as maybe a pivot point. But here's what he's kind of getting at on those inequitable outcomes. All this I have seen in my days of vaporousness, of fleetingness, of uncertainty. There's a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man who lives long in his evil doing. And that's just been sort of the undertow in this whole book, isn't it? That these kinds of things happen. And we are powerless to change it, to avoid it, and to understand it as well. So this has been mentioned earlier. It ties the whole subsequent discussion together through chapter 8 and verse 14. So just to keep in mind, Solomon was a wise man. From his father and his mother, according to Proverbs, from God Himself, who gave him an extraordinary gift of wisdom in order to rule. And Solomon knew that Proverbs are not promises, contrary to Job's three friends. And in Proverbs 10, says, "The fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. The hope of the righteous will be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. The way of the Lord is strength for the upright, but destruction will come to the workers of iniquity. Now that's Solomon writing. He wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. But he knows Ecclesiastes. I don't know what order he wrote these in, but he knows that Proverbs aren't promises. They're generalizations that state what we can expect when we do things the way God wants us to the degree that it depends upon us, the outcomes anticipated will come. But that's not all there is to it. You see, Job's 3 friends who tormented him through the first part of that book we have, the name of Job, didn't understand this. You're being punished, ergo you have sinned. The point. That's it. Okay? The 4th friend came along and said, you guys, you're not thinking right. And he makes sense out of it. So Solomon knows what's going on here, and the same person wrote Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. He would like to have discovered how this enigmatic reversal fits into God's providential governance of his world, but he couldn't. And that's the whole point. That's the thing that he's frustrated with. That's the thing that he says this is just all vapor. But what can he do? But what he can do is to teach about wise living in the spite of this enigma. And that's going to be the rest of the book. Okay, that's going to be the rest of the book. Now we're just going to go through verse 22, and then we'll take verse 23 next week, which has got some really, really interesting things in it. Don't try to beat it is how I would title this verses 16 to 22. Don't be overly righteous, neither make yourself overly wise. Why should you be dumbfounded? A lot of translations say, why should you destroy yourself? Don't be too wicked, neither be foolish. Why should you die before your time? It's good that you should take hold of this. Yes, also from that don't withdraw your hand, for he who fears God will come forth from them both. So we must keep these righteous, wicked reversals in perspective by trusting God in the face of apparent contradictions, armed with the resolve to pursue wise things. So we're going to run into these enigmatic reversals all the time, and we have to deal with it. Now, verse 16 does not mean to be. This does not mean to be too wise or good in an absolute sense. He's not saying that. All right. He's making a point, and I think this is what it is. It does mean that a person should not think he can become so righteous that God would never allow him to experience a terrible misfortune. Okay? That's Job's friends. Or that he could gain a devastation exempt card through some sort of hyper wisdom. I mean, Solomon would never say, "Oh, there's got to be a limit to your wisdom. Just don't go beyond that." I think what he's saying is, don't think you can become so wise, that you can become a super wise, and therefore not have these things happen to you. That just makes a whole lot more sense in regard to the whole tenor of the book and all that we know about wisdom and wisdom literature. Well, somebody might think, well, since there's no guaranteed reward for wisdom, why not indulge in foolishness in the short term? Well, there's some rationale to that, Well, if I'm not going to be rewarded, if I can't guarantee a reward, I'm just going to go out and fun. And, what else could happen? Well, Proverbs says it just invites a quicker and more devastating outcome. So basically, say don't fall off, don't go to extremes. It doesn't mean don't go as far as God wants you to. He does not want you to be a fool, and he wants you to be wise, period. Don't think that excessive wisdom. I'm going to get to the point where I'm protected. No, Jesus wasn't. Could you get any farther toward wisdom than Jesus? No. And don't think, well, if it doesn't really matter, what's it hurt to be like a fool? God says, well, it does make a difference in many ways. But here it's in a poetic form, and so let's deal with it. Now look at just the bottom part of the verse. It's good that you should take hold of this. Yes, also from that don't withdraw your hand, for he who fears God will come forth from them both. So basically, if you fear God and trust him in these kinds of inexplicable reversals, then you'll avoid these two extremes by resolving not to trust in righteousness for protection. Okay? Doesn't mean not to be righteous. It doesn't mean not to be wise. It just means don't put false hope in it, because we live in this world and bad things can happen to good people that only God understands, and only God understands why. And not giving in to wickedness. So it's very balanced. It's very just sane advice. The fact that it's in Hebrew poetry makes it a little harder to unpack, but there it is, and I think that's what makes sense with the passage. So he concludes here in verses 19 to 22, wisdom is a strength to the wise man more than 10 rulers who are in a city. Surely there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and doesn't sin. Also don't take heed to all words that are spoken, lest you hear your servant curse you, for often your own heart knows that you yourself likewise have cursed others. So I think what's going on here, wisdom is our daily armament against avoidable disasters. That's the book of Proverbs. Do this, and therefore this will probably not happen, or this probably will happen. Okay? So that's what Proverbs says. It strengthens by enabling us to identify and respond to even the smallest threats to practical godly living. So if I look at the book of Proverbs and I look at the verses that have to do with the tongue, and I learn some things about the tongue, and I recognize some things I'm doing wrong with the tongue, and oh yeah, that got me into trouble. Okay, Lord, let's change that. Or here, if I speak this way, that's going to do something positive, and I need to learn to do that. Lord, let's change that. Okay, that's what we should be doing. That's what we should be doing. It's just that we can't do it with a, and therefore God will, or won't. Okay, so that's what we've got going on here. Verse 20. Surely he's not a right. Why does he throw that in there? That's obvious. Well, the point is, it's obvious that we need this strengthening, because none of us have it all together. We're going to make mistakes, okay? So we're always going to need to be growing in wisdom. We're always going to need to be growing in those qualities that God wants us to be developing. And then finally, verses 21 to 22, it's an illustration. Something as small as cursing someone, not in their hearing, okay? And to curse means to declare to be utterly insignificant, can bring great harm to the one who hears it. So basically, he's just using this as an illustration. Here's something we all do. We grumble at somebody. We might actually use a curse word, or we might just say, oh, that, okay. And that's such a common human response, especially when we're in situations where somebody is beating on us and we don't deserve it. Okay? Jesus didn't do that, did he? No, because he had his tongue under control. And so this is, again, just here's the real life we live in. God empowers us to be wise as we trust him for it, as we follow him, as we follow the teaching on wisdom. It doesn't mean everything's going to work out right. But it means I will be developing in character. It means something will be happening that will end up as a good name in the end. So just again to remind us of what this book about. Yeah, Solomon is frustrated in his exhaustive efforts to understand God's providential design as it impacts our earthly experience, and that includes at the top of the list. When the righteous receive what the wicked deserve, and the wicked get what the righteous deserve. That he is specifically mentioned in this section. But even with all those problematic things, all of those enigmas and those inequalities, still he concludes that we must enjoy life as a gift from God. Okay? Enjoy it as a gift. not as the fool enjoys it, who just goes out and looks for the happiest experience of the moment, the house of feasting. No, as the wise man experiences it, who lives responsibly by trusting in the one to whom must ultimately give an account. So these three items you can see are at work in these texts we just looked at, and pull the whole book together and pull all of life together in a way that we can not understand life, but understand what's going on in life when we don't understand life, because we're confident that God does. He understands it, and He's there to help us to live it responsibly, to enjoy it to the degree that it is possible, and to do it unto Him.